that's just one example of how the family has been destroyed. And like I said, I think the issue of the black family, it's been something that I've been really interested in for a very long time. And we're going to talk about him in a second, but Kevin Roberts really turned me onto this, who runs the Heritage Foundation, because that was really what led Kevin Roberts to become more of a social conservative and really study all these issues surrounding the family and everything like that. And he said that the primary driver of this was, the black family was thriving. It was the best demographic of family formation in the entire United States, which is remarkable and a testament to black Americans, especially back in those days, for doing the work of getting this immensely powerful social fabric together. But the destruction of the nuclear family has led to essentially every other mass societal ill that we have. And that's not just the black Americans, by the way. J.D. Vance is proof of this. So if you guys don't know anything about J.D. Vance came from the white version of this. So particularly after NAFTA left, or NAFTA and all the trade agreements in the 1990s and all of the open border policies that were really started by our corporatists and a lot of the politicians in D.C., with drugs coming over and flooding inside of the market, black tar heroin, fentanyl, everything else. White America, the white working class has been decimated by this, just as the black working class has been, and the Hispanic working class, and the working class in general. Because, like I said, it's not an issue of demographics; it's an issue of class, like every single issue in society is. And we just like to make an easier label by throwing a racial lens over it. And like I said, I did my whole monologue on the black nuclear family and how I think it's just an immense stain on our culture, and that we have done that to those people. But it's not an issue of anything really that we think that it is, or that we talk about at least, because every problem is a family problem. That's the conclusion that I've come up with in all the research that I've done with this. I've read a lot of sociology. I've done a lot of look into kind of the roles of mothers and fathers and children and social cohesion and everything like that. And so the reason why I wanted to start this conversation about the family off with the destruction of the black nuclear family, which was the pinnacle in many ways of what a family and a societal structure should look like, and how it was targeted and systemically destroyed by the United States government. I wanted to say that and lead with that as a cautionary tale, because I think we often mistake or really kind of denigrate the family, I think unintentionally mostly, but we do that to the family at our own peril, because the family, a lot of people say that the family is a social institution, and that's obviously true. That's obviously correct. The family is a social institution, but the family is not only a social institution, it is way more than a social institution. I think that's what the conversation needs to shift around the family, from just a social institution to this, because I am willing to go as far, and I think there's a lot of evidence for this, that the family is the bedrock for everything that is foundational about the world. I believe the family, or the state of the family in a society, city, your own family, whatever, if your family is solid or if your family is unsolid, that bleeds into your money, your values, the marriage, the success of the children, overall social cohesion, virtue, religious faith, etc. And throughout all of this, I think when you take direct aim at the family, you take aim at quite literally everything that makes a society successful. And when you destroy it, by contrast, society begins to unravel. And it unravels very quickly, as we saw with the example of the black family. We've seen with now the white working class family, everything like that. And so, and what is the reason for this? I think that's the biggest question, because as I kind of got this theory crystallized in my head and I was writing about it this week, and I thought about it for a while, I'm like, okay, so I think that that's the answer, but why is that the answer? I think that's the important question. Why is the family the source of everything foundational? And I think, to maybe go a little bit Freudian on this, not too much, because I don't think that that's helpful, but I think the reason for this, and the reason why the family is as important as it is, and why the fact that we don't talk about it more than we do is a sin, really, is that the family, when you really think about it, whether you had a great relationship with your family or whether you had a poor relationship with your family, it's where you get everything else from. It's where you get everything else from. You get your values from there. You get your way of living from there. You get your perception of the world, at least initially, from there. And obviously, as you leave and you go out into the world and you experience things and you have things happen to you and you get married or you meet people or you go to certain things or whatever, your perceptions change. Like, for example, like me, I've lived, I think like 15 different places since I've become an adult. Like I've lived in the Midwest. I've lived on the East Coast. I'm down in the South now. I've lived in Florida. I've lived in Pennsylvania. I've been visited. I've been overseas a couple times. I've been visited. I've visited a bunch of different places. And so obviously I'm 10 years removed almost from being in my family permanently in terms of like my transition from childhood or adolescence to adulthood. And my perceptions have changed, and I disagree more. And it's not a severe disagreement, but like, do I disagree with around the margins things that my parents did or my brother did or my sister does? Yes. But you can never get away from that fully. You can never get away from that. And so there's a very famous scripture verse about this. I think it's Romans 12:1 that says, Romans 12:2, excuse me. Do not be conformed by the patterns of the world, but instead be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so I think a very similar analysis applies here, because when you are not conformed to the patterns of the family, when your family is in shambles, i.e. when the American family is in shambles, you are conformed to everything outside of the family, which the family is defined largely by structure, by order, by hierarchy, by authority. And this should not be demeaning. I mean, the parents should not just scream at the kids to scream at the kids or whatever, or abuse the kids, obviously. But that is, any healthy family has some sort of hierarchy. It's mom and dad at the top, kids at the bottom, kids do what the parents say, parents have a working relationship. If you're a Christian, the man leads the family, etc. And so when you leave the family, and when you leave that structure, by definition, you are going into an area that is chaotic, unstable, ever-changing, and undefined, which for a child especially, and this is very prevalent inside of a broken family as well. Like, I won't get into specifics, but my mom and my dad grew up very, very differently. One of them grew up in a very stable, nucleic family structure. One grew up in a much more broken and fractured family structure. And that has drastically affected how they are going about their business in the world. And they're both great people, and they have really positive lives, and everything around them is mostly very good. But, to say that did not affect them, and I've talked to them about this to some degree, that's just not true. And it's not true for anybody. It's not true for me. And I was very fortunate to grow up in a much more solid structure, and no family is perfect. Ours wasn't perfect, but mine was pretty good, I think, compared to other people at least. And so I'm very grateful for that. And so when you take this example, just internalize that for a second in your own life. When you look at all of the issues going on in the world, and you look, particularly among young people, you look at things like crime, addiction, porn, failure to launch syndrome, particularly all of these mainly affecting young men, by the way, particularly around children, like I said, you will see a common root, which is the lack of the familial support structure inside the family. You will see a negligent family. You will see a broken family. You will see an unsupportive family, which is leading the children who are looking for guidance. They are looking for structure. They are looking for organization to go outside of the family to find those things, to the world to find those things. And this is, I think, a part of there's a lot of talk about like the great replacement theory or whatever. I'm not going to talk about this, but an alternative to the great replacement theory, or I guess maybe an extension of it to a degree, is that what our ruling class and what our elites have done is they have tried everything in their power to replace the family with outside institutions. They have tried to say, if you just get a degree, if you just do X, Y, and Z, if you go to college, your job defines you, your sexual orientation behind you, your race defines you, and this is going to be what everything is going to outsource to define you. But that's impossible. It's just not possible. And they've tried it, by the way. They've tried it with government. They've tried it with work. They've tried it with everything. But you cannot, it's like a gravitational centripetal force pull that pulls you inside, and you can't escape it, because there is no replacing something at that foundational of a level without breaking something along the way. And we have broken something. We've broken children. We have broken marriages. We've broken families. We have broken the social fabric at the most foundational level, because it would be like trying to operate the United States government, the biggest institution in the entire world right now, if you took the Constitution and you took the Declaration of Independence and you threw them into a wood chipper and said, go run the government. no one would know how to. We would lose the operating manual for how to run the country. And so that is why those documents are so important. That is why the mission statement for any company, for example, is so important. That is why the culture is so important. And any conversation that is around societal change without a conversation surrounding the culture is a false conversation. It is not anything that holds real weight, real value, etc. And so rather, the right answer to this breakdown that we're seeing inside of our culture, it is not any social institution that is constructed. It is not the market. It is not business. It is not education. It is not any immutable characteristic. It is primarily the heterosexual, dual parent, mother and father, plus kids, nuclear family. That will be the best strategy. Jason Whitlock has said this over and over again. The nuclear family, particularly the Christian nuclear family, particularly the religious nuclear family, is undefeated. He's right about that. He's right about that. The data proves that. The opening monologue proves that with the black family and its kind of de-evolution into this kind of, destruction that the government forced upon it. And the white working class has this as well. It is the perfect amount of polarity, this dynamic, again, heterosexual, dual parent, mother and father, ideally Christian, religious, whatever, family, that provides the perfect amount of polarity that gives children a shield from all of the chaos that the world has to offer. Jordan Peterson was absolutely right about this when he said that marriage is not for the two people getting married. Marriage is for children. And I would argue marriage is also for God. It's for God and for kids. Marriage is not for you, the man or the woman, the husband or the wife. It is for God, it is for children, and it is for culture, period. And if the marriage is great and happy, and I wish that on everyone who does choose to get married, and we'll talk about marriage in a second, that's great. But marriage is much more than two people who love each other. It's much more than that. And anyone who just says just two people who love each other, they should get married. No. Marriage, my pastor, Ethan Matat, has a great saying about marriage. Marriage is not the mission. Marriage has a mission. And that's exactly right. It's exactly right. So a lot of people view marriage as the end result of something, like it is the pinnacle moment of something. And that's not true at all. Instead, marriage has a mission, which is God, community, children. So marriage is for, primarily. So, and when any, and I mean any, confusion enters into that equation of the family, of marriage, you have absolutely no chance for children to thrive. None whatsoever. I have yet to see, and maybe they will eventually, and maybe there are some outliers, and there are some outliers. J.D. Vance is one. My mom is one in the example that I said earlier on. But it is really hard to do that. It's very hard. You should not bank on that. And that is why when you look at any societal ill, to look at this and to see what's going wrong with our culture, you have to start at the family, because any analysis of what's going on without proper examination of the family it's just incorrect, in my opinion. It's a bad starting point for anyone who's looking at this.